Hi, guys. Welcome to our next lecture. And this is the tools and techniques of science. And of course, remember that science is all about making observations and then, analyzing those observations, experimenting. One of the important parts about it is making measurements, right? Science is all about quantitation. And so when you do quantities, you do math. So, why is math important and why is math important to science? Well, this is how we establish facts. So in this diagram, you can see here, that's actually the Milky Way galaxy. And if you've ever been lucky enough to be in a really dark place, that's when I was a kid, you could see the Milky Way galaxy in Virginia quite readily. Of course, today you'd have to go out into the middle of Pennsylvania or out into the deserts of the United States to be able to see it. If you've ever been out on an island, you might be able to see the Milky Way. But that's it. It's milky looking. And what you're looking at there is the center of our Milky Way galaxy. All right, so the Milky Way galaxy is a spiral-shaped galaxy. Looks like a sombrero. And you're out on the edge of the sombrero. And when you look up into the night sky and you see this band, you're looking into the center. Turns out currently we think that at the center of every galaxy is a black hole. We're sort of spinning around that black hole. Milky Way galaxy has about 200 billion stars. 200 billion stars. And that's a large number. How long would it take you to count to 200 billion? Well, I think the average person's heart beats about 2 billion times over the course of their lifetime. Maybe it's more like 2.8, but let's just round ball it. So that means you'd have to live for like 2 billion times 100, 100 times like 7,200. If you lived for 7,200 years, 7,200 years, you could count to 2 billion. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a large number, 200 billion. Not only that, though, but then there's like in the visible universe, there's like 250 billion other galaxies. So, sort of amazing and impossible for humans to comprehend these large values. That's hard to work with as well. So, when we do science, we work with systems to manage large values. And of course, the system that we use in science is the metric system, all right? So there's some basic premises or some basic rules for metric system. It's a base 10 units. Throughout history, people have developed mathematical systems that aren't based on the number 10, okay? And you can see evidence for this in some of the ways we continue to measure it, all right? So, our time is measured on a base 6 system, right? 60 minutes, 12 hours, 24 hours. That 6 is the number that organizes it, and there's other ways to do that as well. I think there's a base 12 system in the Indian traditions. Anyway, we work with the base 10 system in the metric system, and there are some prefixes you need to know, like kilo, which means 1,000. Deci means 1/10. Centi means 1/100th. Doesn't mean 100, it means 1/100th. Milli's 1,000th, not to be mistaken with million. Micro means 1/1,000,000th, and this is the little Greek letter mu. It looks like a U, but it's got a little doodad hanging off here. And then last but not least is nano, and that means 1/1,000,000,000th. Okay? It's a really small value. Okay, know that. We measure mass in grams, we measure length in meters, we measure temperature in Celsius or Kelvin, depending upon what kind of science you're doing. Our solid volumes are measured in cubic meters, and our liquid volumes can be measured in liters or even cubic centimeters, but there you go. So you should be able to identify these values. And that brings us to this factor label method. And the factor label method is a technique that allows you to make some conversions, right? So if I asked you how many centimeters were there in 25 feet, you could come up with the answer if you use this system. And I've got an activity designed for you to work through. And I'll embed a lecture that elaborates this there. So anyway, the reason I teach you the factor label method is because next year when you go to chemistry, this is sort of the place where kids really struggle. And the factor label method, figuring out how many inches are in 25 feet is easy. And the truth is, in chemistry, the math is similarly easy. You just have to keep things straight. In fact, the factor label method refers to the fact that in science, we talk about factors, numbers, and then labels, the units. And if you can kind of treat these as two distinct entities, when you get to chemistry, it'll help you be successful. So that's what my purpose is in teaching this stuff. In chemistry, they call it dimensional analysis. There's other ways to talk about it as well. But in short, it's a way to solve word problems. And most kids have problems with word problems. So when you get to the next activity on the factor label method, hopefully you'll have some success there. Well, biology is a broad term, and there are lots and lots of biological sciences. In general, but biology is a study of life, and living things are called organisms, right? But there's all kinds of ways to address living organisms at a small scale and at a large scale. So, for instance, biochemists study the molecular constituents of living organisms, right? Macromolecules, big giant molecules, that's what we're made of. Cytologists study cells, and you can see there's a cell being worked on in the background there. That's an example of in vitro fertilization. That's an ovum, and that person is using a glass capillary to inject DNA into that cell. Genetics is a study of how traits are inherited. Microbiology is the study of little tiny organisms, single-celled organisms, or just really small things. There's lots of things that are small that aren't single-celled. Evolution is the study of how species change over time. Botany is the study of plants. Zoology is the study of animals. And then you guys had a whole course on ecology last year. And that's how living things interact with the inanimate environment. All right, well, that's it. We're about to move on to the characteristics of living things. And I'll see you in a minute.